Hey, what's up, guys? As many of you know, it's not very often that I get a chance to do a review, but every once in a while, something like a product or a service comes my way that that I get excited to share with you guys about. Be it for example, the Boxer tactical belts or the Business and Customs Cerakoting. And I have something that I want to share with you today because I have a lot of enthusiasm for it, and that is specifically the Apex Tactical Specialties trigger kits for the M&P series of pistol. What we have here today is my everyday carry M&P9 compact, and then more of a sort of range gun or wintertime carry gun, my M&P9 Full Size. And what I want to do is talk. I've a different kit installed in each of them, and what I'd like to do is have a little discussion and description of the characteristics of each kit and what I like about them. So what we'll do is we'll get started with the M&P9 compact here. So there we go. Break it down. Let's talk about some of the parts that come in the Apex kit. A lot of you guys who have an M&P, especially when they're newer, you guys will notice that the trigger has a gritty feel on the uptake. It might have a little grind as you take the slack out of the trigger, and that results from the striker block interfacing with the striker block cam on the trigger bar. Now, as you press the trigger, the sort of safe action design, this cam, let's see if we can see it here. This cam right here travels rearward and pushes up on the firing pin block safety. And what you can do right now, if you have your gun handy, you can take your gun apart and with a little pencil or something push on that and feel that it's a little stiff and that its action is a little bit gritty. What Apex does is they provide a new firing pin, or rather striker block, which is rounded and machined very finely. And they provide a new small spring that goes in there that makes its travel a little bit easier. So it's a little easier to compress, and as the trigger bar travels across it, you don't get that gritty feel. So that's step one. For those of you who are interested in doing this kit, if you have experience with taking apart Glocks, for example, you know that you can just take the striker plate off, take the striker out, and that this striker block will fall out the bottom of the slide. It's a little trickier on the M&P because it is retained inversely insofar as you have to take the rear sight off, and then that mechanism will kind of pop out the top of the slide. So make sure that if you're doing this, make sure that you use the provided tool in the Apex kit. If you're thinking about disassembling this, be prepared for the spring and a little cap to kind of jump out of there unexpectedly as you drift the rear sight over. Additionally, in this kit, they provide you with a new sear, and that sear has the sear itself has a slightly more precise machining, which makes the trigger a little nicer and a little smoother, as well as a series of other additional springs which help out. Also, what I've installed in this gun, as well as the other one, is the Apex RAM, and the RAM is essentially a plunger, a spring-loaded plunger that fits into the striker block that acts on the trigger bar to help increase the feeling of reset by applying a certain amount of tension to it so when you let the trigger out to reset, it'll pop over in an audible and tactile way as a result of that spring pressure. Otherwise, there's really nothing causing that sensation to occur in the stock pistol other than the tension that exists in the trigger bar as it comes standard. So I'm going to pop this back together and share with you guys a little bit about what I like about this trigger. So what I like about this trigger insofar as an everyday carry gun goes is that it still has a reasonable amount of uptake, so that there's that sort of high stress negligent discharge risk reduction there. So it's not as though it's primed with a little light 2-pound trigger. And the actual trigger pull weight is still of a amount of pressure that I think is really reasonable for a carry gun. They advertise it being sort of in the 4.5 to 5 pound range, and it definitely feels like that. So I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure and a little bit of pressure until it breaks. And then when it breaks, you don't get a really extreme amount of over travel. And what's nice about that is that the over travel can contribute to a certain amount of deviation in the point of impact. If you're sort of still pulling the trigger as the gun is firing, if you don't have a very perfect press, it will lend itself to a certain amount of front sight flinch. And I can tell you that in the hundreds of rounds I put through this gun since installing the kit, that symptom is very much alleviated. The best way that I can describe this trigger is if you have a buddy who has a Glock and he's got maybe 5,000 or 6,000 rounds through it, it feels a little bit more like that. The reset isn't as pronounced and staple gunny as a Glock is, but it's definitely there. Let's take a look at that. Again, just one more time. So yeah, I mean, it's audible, it's tactile, there's a good amount of smooth pressure that's required to remove that uptake, and then a really clean break that doesn't have a gratuitous amount of creep, and a reasonable amount of over travel, if any. So I'm extremely pleased with the DCAEK trigger kit, especially for a carry gun, and if you don't have one, oh, and in addition to the RAM's just a supplemental part, it's about $20. If you are considering installing this kit in your M&P, stop considering it and buy it. I can't say anything bad about it. The installation is reasonably easy if you're handy at all. And if you're not handy, I'm sure that you have a friend who is and is happy to install it, or there are gunsmiths everywhere who can perform this service for you. Installing this whole kit in the compact took me all of about 20 minutes. You only have a couple, you do a standard field strip, take the rear sight out, do the striker block modification in the slide assembly, and then you really only have 3 pins that hold the rest of this together. You've got one back here holding the sear block assembly in. You've got one roll pin under here that helps hold the locking block in, and then there's another pin hiding behind the takedown lever, which doesn't even require a punch to take out. You don't have to hammer on it, you can just push it through, which holds the trigger assembly in. And it's easy peasy. I recommend it. The other kit that I want to talk about is the forward set sear and trigger kit. Now, this kit comes with a new sear, a new striker block, a variety of little springs. I also installed the RAM reset assist mechanism in this one as well, and it comes with an all-aluminum trigger. Now, what you'll see about this trigger is that it's not a hinged trigger like the stock M&P. What they've done is they've put that sort of Glock-style little sliver finger trigger safety in there, so that if you pull on the sides of the gun, of the trigger rather, you don't get a you can't actuate the trigger. However, if you depress the little trigger safety just like a Glock, you can cause the trigger to travel. And what's nice is that since this is an all aluminum trigger, and it's actually significantly wider than the stock trigger, the finger placement and actual feel and the experience of pressing this trigger is greatly enhanced. So I won't break this one down because they essentially replace all the same parts. I will note, however, that the striker block that they give you is modified, and it's not interchangeable between these two systems as a result of the geometry changes inside the gun, resulting from the specific modifications of the forward set sear kit. This particular M&P started life as actually a Pro Series. Before they had the 5-inch Pro Series, there was a short amount of time when you could get like this 4 1/4 regular size Pro Series, and it came with a 4.5 pound trigger out of the box, which I thought was reasonably decent. But just like any M&P, the reset wasn't all that fantastic. And what I discovered, I always thought it was pretty easy to shoot it fast and to shoot it accurately, but what I discovered over the last weekend, about a week ago, when I shot my very first IDPA match ever, was that adding a certain amount of stress really put me in a situation where I found myself slapping the trigger more than I did at any other point having shot this gun. The uptake was kind of vague, the brake was a little vague, and then the reset was kind of invisible, and I found that I wasted a lot of concentration on searching for that, focused on that trigger manipulation in a wasted way. It wasn't sort of like focusing on a clean press. It was trying to decipher what the information that the trigger was trying to tell me as I was shooting it, and I wound up slapping it. Because trying to fire it in a hurry, you overshoot the reset, and then you overshoot the break, and you get a certain amount of slap. What this kit does, the forward set sear and trigger kit does, is it greatly reduces the amount of uptake and almost entirely eliminates the amount of over travel by altering the geometry of the trigger and of the sear. So what I want to show you is how this particular trigger breaks. So what you'll see here is that there's vastly less uptake. So there's maybe a 1/4 inch of uptake. Let's compare that real briefly, refresh your memory, to the compact, where we've got like a 1/2 inch of uptake, and then the break. What we have here is a 1/4 inch of uptake, and then about gotta reset the sear. We've got about 1/8 to a 1/4 inch of uptake, then about 4.5 to 5 pounds of pressure, and then what you'll notice is that there's no over travel. You can see that the trigger's not even hitting the over travel stop. Now the gun cycles, and then the reset on this is now very tactile and audible. And I took this to the range for the first time after installing it this morning, and I can tell you that this trigger is lightning fast. It feels like a nice 1911 trigger almost. I mean, obviously you still have a striker, and that's going to cause a certain amount of the trigger feel not to feel like a 1911. But this is tremendous. It is really great for a striker-fired gun. I mean, that amount of travel right there is nothing. However, it's not like a dangerously light trigger. This is still in a what I think is a kind of almost acceptable defensive range. This is definitely on the sort of 4.5 pound range, or not as close to 5, but I'm very happy with it nonetheless. Rapid fire is fantastic, and then the effects on accuracy that I noticed were pretty good. I shot it at the nearby indoor range, which isn't very long distance. I did manage to basically shoot the Q out of one of those milk bottle targets at about 50 feet, and that's really, really, really good for me. I can tell you that. That's above average shooting for me. But the feel of this trigger is great. The width is very nice. It lends itself to a very good, correct trigger finger placement. It's consistent. The installation of this kit, not quite as easy, mainly because you have to drift a pin out of the trigger to install the new trigger bar, and that is a bear. That's what took me the most amount of time, and there was a certain amount of sweating and swearing involved in that. However, it's not the most difficult thing I've ever done, and I wouldn't let that deter you from obtaining this kit. It is marvelous. If you do any kind of competitive shooting, or if you just want to increase the tactical performance of your M&P pistol, this forward set sear kit is really, really great. It's better than I thought it was going to be, by far, and I had heard a lot of good things about it. So this is just my initial review, obviously, of the Apex products. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, over time, assemble some shooting footage of these and share that with you as time goes on, and obviously the sort of amount of if there's any reliability issue or anything, I'm sure it'll crop up. Nothing's occurred in this one yet, and given the quality that I've experienced with Apex, I imagine that nothing will occur in this one either. So I'll let you know if this trigger kit helps me improve my accuracy and IDPA at all. I suspect it will, since the tendency to slap this trigger is greatly reduced. It's just great. I mean, I can't think of a striker-fired trigger that I like more than this, be it the PPQ or the FNS. I mean, examples of really nice striker-fired triggers, or these are just Oh, that's just so sweet. That's so sweet. Anyway, that's my opinion on the Apex products that I've used and installed so far. I can tell you what, having put them in these guys, Rebecca's Shield is definitely going to get a DCAEK. Smooth out that 6.5 pound trigger and bring it down hopefully in closer to the 5 pound range. That's going to be a tremendously sweet shooting little pistol. So stay tuned for an update in regards to that. Stay tuned for possibly some shooting videos that show off or highlight the capabilities of the Apex kit. And stay tuned for maybe a new IDPA video at the end of Sunday or Monday. Have a great weekend, guys. Have a good Labor Day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.